Hello, I'm Elizabeth, an obsessive backyard gardener who might be able to offer you a couple of tips.
And I'm Keith, a landscape consultant, and I'm also passionate about gardening.
The one thing we both have in common is muddy boots. It is Q&A time, Keith. The questions have been pouring in. They have been pouring over the last few weeks. We've moved on to March, April, May, I think. I've never seen so many requests, so let's get on with it. This week, our topics include rabbits eating ground cover plants, Frangipani and viburnum pests, native plant pruning, passion fruit vine munchers, and worm castings. And one listener would like to know the best conditions for growing a pomegranate tree. Okay, let's go. Pia is first up. She says, my friend's garden is being overrun by passion hoppers. They're eating all sorts of plants. What is your recommendation for treatment, Keith?
Passion fruit hoppers are just an absolute pain in the bum. And I think the only way that you can really control those is to set up a systemic and a regular spray pattern. So I've got a passion fruit vine at home, and I have got minimal number of passion fruit hoppers on it because I've been regularly spraying it with a mix of eco oil and eco neem. So I've got a sprayer already mixed up, a 5 litre sprayer mixed up, sitting in the shed that I go out every week and I spray the underside of the leaves and the overside of the leaves. And I've seen more passion fruit hoppers on the house, on the weatherboards of the house, rather than sucking, the living daylights out of the actual plants. So by doing it on a weekly basis, the eco neem is absorbed by the actual plant, and therefore anything that comes to suck it will then be killed. And eco neem is one of the best products that you can possibly use in your garden. And I had someone contact me and say, I just bought a bottle of eco neem and it says it's not for vegetables. It's not for anything you can eat. So I spoke with a guy who I've known for many, many years, who's worked at OCP, which is now owned by Yates. And I spoke to Steve about this, and he said, well, what I would suggest they do if they want to cover themselves and feel happy is order it from New Zealand, because it's the same product in New Zealand where they have had the test done over there, and they have a withholding period of 1 day. 1 day. And he said, and if you buy it from some other countries around the place, there's no withholding period at all. But here in Australia, they've been throwing money. Yates have been throwing money at the big organisation, and they're just not coming back with, okay, we accept it. It is the best product that you can use on the market, the safest.
What's the withholding period? What is that?
Okay, well, if you were putting, years ago, if you were spraying a fruit tree with a particular chemical that kills bugs or codling moth or something else, one of these carbarels or something, on that packet they would say, do not eat that fruit for 7 to 10, whatever, 15, 20 days. So it's called a withholding period. And in New Zealand, they've got 1 day. But in other countries that this is available for, there's no withholding period at all. Here in Australia, these mongrels haven't allowed it to be, set up and used. It's
dreadful.
Just
give it a day.
So eco neem
and eco oil in the amounts again.
Will you tell me?
Oh, I've forgotten. Quickly, 12 mil to 25.
Eco neem is 12 mil per 5 litre container, and eco oil is 25 mil.
Oh, that's what I said. I haven't forgotten.
Yep.
Okay, good. Good luck, Pia. Next up is Emma. I have a question for Keith about our neighbour's Frangipani tree. Not only does it provide perfect privacy between us and the neighbour, but also shade in summer and welcome sun in wintertime. We have noticed a white powdery fungus or animal on the tree. It started under the leaves and looks to now be making its way down the trunk and branches. It's a large tree and we hope this isn't something that might kill it. How can we treat this, or should we hire someone who could manage this for us?
And I didn't get enough information from Emma on that, so I actually sent her a phone message, and because I thought it was important to follow this up, because what I need to know is what that white substance is, whether it is a powdery mildew, which in humid conditions in Queensland will affect the frangipanis, or it could be an insect infestation. And luckily enough, she had problems with her emails, but finally got that sorted. So she sent me some pictures and a small video, and I was able to identify it as a woolly aphid. So a woolly aphid is woolly because it's got this waxy substance over him. And that waxy substance protects him from lots of sprays that you can actually spray on them. They repel.
Yeah.
So I suggest that she uses a pyrethrum-based spray, and perhaps mix into, when you fill up the container with the right quantities, add just a couple of drops of dishwashing detergent into the very last bit. And what the dishwashing detergent does is it makes water wetter. It's a hard. Think about it. When you wash your dishes, if you don't use the dishwashing detergent, you're not going to get grease off.
Yeah.
But the dishwashing detergent makes that water wetter, so it can get in and dissolve and absorb. All those things. Okay. So by applying a pyrethrum spray with a little bit of dishwashing detergent over the whole thing, and then a follow up in another couple of weeks, just in case they've laid eggs, that's the best thing you can do.
Fabulous. Okay, we have a question from Hannah now. We live in Dingley Village in Victoria and planted a dozen or so Chrysocephalum apiculatum plants, I don't know how to say that any better than that, in our sandy soil about a year ago. They've been doing fabulously and we love the colour and vibrancy they add to our garden. But they've been looking rather bedraggled, and I read that they can be pruned right back to their crown. I've tried this with one plant and I'm worried it's not going to survive. Could you please help me with the best way to prune and care for my Chrysocephalum? How do you pronounce it?
That's pretty good.
Thank you so much.
It's better off. It's just a yellow button.
Yeah, I know.
That's all it is. It's yellow buttons. The way that people say that you can cut things back to the crown is often a very, very misleading piece of information. And I actually responded by telling her to take off the spent heads only, because the further you cut back into something, you're opening up that plant for shock. And when we've got hot weather, it's even more shocking. So I would suggest that she just deadheads them. No, don't go in too far, because Australian native plants, like a lot of South African plants, do not like being cut back too hard. And you can't go back, any further back than about, a plant that's got maybe 6 or 8 leaves left on it, because it will just kill it.
Yep.
So I just suggest that she does the deadheading with a pair of shears, and then to follow that up with a seaweed solution. And the seaweed solution is like a tonic. It will help to restructure the plant's root system, and also the leaf structure of the actual plant itself, and set it up. And hopefully they'll recover from that.
That one might not, but anyway.
No.
Okay. Julie is next, and she would like to know the best treatment for spider mite on a viburnum tinus hedge.
Yep.
Please.
Yes. The best thing to do there is to apply a miticide of some sort, and there's lots of different varieties that are available. Maverick is one that you can actually use.
What's a miticide?
A miticide, okay. Yeah, because these little things that are underneath the leaves they're not necessarily they're more closely related to, say, scorpions or spiders. So you've got to use a spray that's going to kill that particular range. So something like Maverick is a great product. There's another one called Nature Soap, which is another ready-to-use spray that you can get. And you've got to get it in underneath the leaves. Yep. Now, if that was my plant, then I would be using, once again, I'd be going for something like Eco Neem and Eco Oil.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but you've got to get in underneath it, because all those little sods are underneath it.
It's got to be dripping with it.
It's got to be dripping underneath it.
Yep.
And viburnums present that very obviously, because their leaves almost go a silver colour, and that is those little mongrels underneath sucking out of the cells the chlorophyll and the sugars that are in there.
Okay.
So it's a pain in the bum, but that's the best solution that I would be just suggesting you do.
Okay. Good luck, Julie. Now Rhonda has a comment and a question for us. The comment follows a recent Instagram post from Keith regarding possums eating passion fruit vines. Rhonda says, I had a resident possum for years in my Queensland house. She and I shared the passion fruit from my vine for years until the plant died. All my attempts to grow a new one anywhere around the deck was useless. The possum ate every leaf of every plant. And the same possum also loved my chilies. What do you got to say about that?
And I did a post on that with my own passion fruit vine at home. The possums, the ringtail possums, have been shredding my ornamental trees and everything else. And where they walk along the top of the fence, I've got a passion fruit vine growing there. And when you do a bit of research on passion fruit vines, they actually create a cyanide in the leaves. But the thing is that the cyanide is more concentrated in the older leaves. It gets to build up in the older leaves, whereas the new leaves, don't contain anywhere near that amount. So the possums will chew those off. It might not kill them, but it could make them rather sick. But if it's continual new leaves that are coming through and they've got nothing else to eat, they will eat those leaves. Best solution there is where she wants to grow herself a passion fruit vine, stick a nail on the fence and stick an apple there every bloody night. And they'll eat the apple, be so dumb, fat and happy, they're not going to chew anything else. They'll go off and think of something else to do rather than eat.
Are you sure?
I am sure, because it's worked for me at home.
Okay.
My passion fruit vine is absolutely thriving, and there's not a thing eaten.
Okay. So go get a bag of apples. Now for Rhonda's question. I look after the worms at our local community garden. What is the most efficient way to use the castings, including making worm tea? And what is the best way to use the tea?
Okay, so the best way to use the tea is to dilute it down, and to 1 to 10 or 1 to 15 is a good mix. So you put 1 part. So if you've got a 10 litre watering can, put in 1 litre of the wormweed and then fill it up with water, give it a bit of an agitate, and go around and just spray it around all over your vegetables. Another great way of getting a quick harvest and getting both the castings and the wormweed is on perhaps a day that maybe is getting a bit warm. Take the lid off. Where the bottom of the worm farm is, you have a bucket to collect all that stuff. So you put a 10 litre bucket underneath that, and you get a 10 litre bucket of water, and you empty it over the whole worm farm. Tip it over the whole lot, and that'll wash all those chelates. It'll wash down the worm castings in a soluble form down into that bottom bucket. It'll take a little while to do that, but that's something I do on a regular basis.
Okay.
Is just simply upending a bucket of cold water over the worms on a warm day. They love it. They love it.
That's
and
good,
then you've got that beautiful concentrate that's not only just wormweed, but it's wormweed and castings. And you can do that 1 litre to 20 litres into your garden and just go and apply it. And as we already know, 100% of what we empty out of that onto our garden is locked in and used by the plants in that soil. It doesn't wash down away and then end up in the rivers or the bays. It's locked into the soil and taken up by the plants as they require it. So a great, quick, effective way of doing that, rather than trying to go through the process of pushing all the worms over to one side and harvesting that little bit. This is just so much quicker.
Okay, I'll remember that. Matt Phillips, who I think
God.
you know Matt Phillips. Now, he has sent us some questions about soil pH levels. These are Matt's 3 questions, and I think I'll read them all out together as they're all related. What are the most effective ways to alter soil pH levels in gardens and lawns is number 1. Number 2, what effect do pH levels have on nutrient availability? And number 3, how susceptible are plants to pests, disease and bacteria when they are not grown in their optimum pH, specifically oak trees, he's saying.
Now, Matt's doing a project at the moment. Matt was my first apprentice landscape gardener, and Matt is currently doing a bit of irrigation work at a farm that is growing truffles.
Oh, yum.
So it's an oak tree, an oak tree plantation that is growing truffles. I think Matt just wants to make sure that he's got everything, all the boxes ticked so he can go on. So this is not a simple little answer to this question.
No,
this, unfortunately, is a bit more involved. So the soil pH is a numeric order of 0 to 14, and 7 is the neutral basis. So anything that is below 7 is acidic, and anything above 7 is alkaline. And plants require a certain pH in value, that is a certain pH value, in order to get the best they possibly can out of the elements that are in the soil. So things like azaleas and rhododendrons, and blueberries, like a pH that is slightly acidic. So anything below, say, 6.5 down to 5.5 is perfect for those particular plants, and they perform the best and they get the best out of it. Vegetables, for instance, like a pH range between 5.5 and 6.5. So just below that range.
Yep.
And of course, plant growth is related to the availability of the nutrients in the soil. Okay, so there are three major categories. And this is the very, very important thing. The main one is N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's the first major category. And then after that, within those three, they're the main ones that the plant uses in big volumes all the time. So they're the ones that have got to be there, available for that. And then the secondary nutrients are those such as magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. So that's the next major range of the nutrients. And then the bottom range are the micronutrients, which are things like zinc, manganese, boron, and many of these other things. So it's very important that the acidity is matched to the plants that you're actually going to be growing in.
Right.
Sorry?
Right. I'm just trying to get the brain to connect to all this.
It is. It's very important.
Yep.
We can talk about the sorts of things that will adjust pH very, very quickly. So if you want to raise your pH, so if you've got a soil that is down below, say, 5 or 6, to raise it up, you need to add a form of lime. And calcium carbonate is one quick way of doing that. If you've got a soil that is alkaline, you've got to bring that down. And the way that you bring that down is you use a thing called sulfur. And sulfur, there's a wettable form and a non-wettable form. The non-wettable form you put down as a powder, and you can't water that in. You've just got to mix that into the soil profile, and it's got to be moist. And what happens then is
it's got
to be moist, and both when you're raising the pH or lowering, the soil has got to be moist because it's not going to work. It's not going to react.
Okay.
So the sulfur that you put in the powdered form is broken down by microbes, and those microbes turn that sulfur powder into sulfuric acid. Right. And that sulfuric acid then lowers the soil pH. But it's got to be done according to what the recommendations are on your pH test. You've got to test your soil first and then work it out from there.
Yeah.
There is, and that process can take 4 to 6 to 8 weeks in order to lower that pH.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted to bring it down straight away, and you could use a product which is an allium-based product. Okay, so, and it will reduce the pH immediately, but it's got to be moist with the soil. It's got to have that beautiful, reaction with the soil straight away. So, and that product is called aluminium sulfate.
Okay.
All right, and that will reduce the pH
immediately. Is that safe?
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. It's absolutely safe. But once again, you've got to make sure that you've got your measure, so you know what you're going to be doing.
What you need, yeah.
Soils high in organic matter, like compost, have abundance of bacteria, and that helps to break both those components down and reduce the soil's pH. Okay. Now we get back to the last question in that, which was about the oak trees, or part of that last question.
Yep.
Oak trees prefer a soil with a pH between 5 and 7, so they're pretty forgiving. And of course, so it's in the acidic range. And oak trees have horizontal root systems that go out through and so they prefer lots and lots of organic matter to be available for their plants. And so correcting your soil pH is beneficial for all your plants. So it doesn't really matter. You've got to know what your plant requires, whether it's an acid soil or will they tolerate an alkaline soil. And there's lots of plants down the Mornington Peninsula that are growing in limestone, things like leptospermums and these Spanksias that will tolerate a high lime sort of a soil. But that sort of gets back to, hopefully to answering most of those questions. And of course, an addition of Monash rock dust is a great thing for your actual soil.
So if I'm planting things out here, I've obviously amended. My soil's in great condition, great shape. It's all fantastic. But then we're putting in a variety of plants. How do I know? Is it when I see my plant floundering? That's when I go, okay, I better check the soil pH.
Yeah, but you won't have that problem because you're putting in the plants that you're putting on. Sorry, the elements that you're putting in there are buffers. All right, so the compost and the lignite humate, they're buffers.
Okay.
So that's going to absorb a lot of problems that you might have in your soil. So I'm telling you now, you won't have problems with your soil.
Fantastic. No. I was just we could go on for hours about this. Okay,
and of course, pest and disease. That was another part of that question. Pest and disease attacks plants that have poor health conditions. You know, when we get run down, we pick up everything. Someone sneezes and we've got the flu. So it gets back to the health of the soil.
What we're feeding ourselves, what we're feeding our plants.
Exactly, reflects back to the health of the actual plants that you're growing in. Pest and disease find it hard to break down sugars. So a plant that's got a higher sugar content, and you've got that with all that goodness you've got out there, it's going to have trouble breaking that down.
Fantastic. Matt, I hope you're happy with that answer.
Oh, so do
Surely,
I, Matt.
That was a big one. Okay, moving on quickly. We have a question from Ainsley. Can you please provide any tips regrowing pomegranate trees in Melbourne? We have some light frost in our area.
Frosts are not going to be a problem because most pomegranates are deciduous. So when there's frost around, it's not a problem. But if you find that you get a quick frost and you've got leaves on your plant, then it'll burn those leaves. Leave those leaves on there all the way through until spring.
Yep.
Now, in terms of getting fruit from a pomegranate and getting it quickly is to have 2 pomegranates of different varieties.
Okay.
And they're readily available, easy to source. And where you've got 2 of the same plant, you're going to get a heavier crop and a heavier development of fruit.
Okay.
So 2 varieties.
And that's all about pollination.
It's more about drawing bees in to pollinate, and when they're there, there's another plant there next to me, so they go and do that. So you'll get a much greater yield if you've got 2 plants.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, we have a request for help from David now for 2 plant suggestions for his north-facing courtyard in Melbourne. He has 2 areas that he requires suggestions for. Number 1. We would like to plant 2 ornamental grapevines in half wine barrels beside 2 of the metal posts of our pergola. Something to soften and beautify the courtyard and provide some shade. Are grapevines suitable for this spot, and can you please advise on feeding and nurturing their growth?
I can, and I did. And
you have already.
Dave wanted a quick response, so I sent him an email. And I got an email back straight away. And he said...
Fabulous.
He said, you wouldn't believe it, Keith. He said, 1... we are sitting out in this courtyard right now, and 2, we're listening to Muddy Boots podcast. So I just thought, that was a winner. What a ripper.
Thank you, Dave.
All right.
And Debbie.
So grapevines are absolutely fantastic to soften off this area. You know, they're a great plant. You're in a north hot situation. They love the hot heat. And the beauty about that is that it's north facing, so you don't want those areas to be covered with a tree or a climber that's going to be evergreen, because you're not going to get the solar opportunities you're going to get in that area during the winter.
Yep.
So a grapevine is a brilliant one to use. And the varieties that I recommended was having 1 of each, so a white and a red, and you can get Thompson seedless, which is a white variety, and you get a crimson seedless as well. So you've got the best of both worlds there. They'll be fine in a wine barrel, growing those in a wine barrel, but just make sure the pH is neutral, because that's what they like. And I'd suggest that you use a potting mix rather than using a soil mix, because it will remain open much longer, as it slowly breaks down. And the last thing that I recommended to him was to make sure that the wine barrels are sitting on feet. So little feet that keep them off the ground, that allows air to move around, so that the bottoms of those wine barrels don't rot out in the first year. Gives circulation around it, and it also allows the moisture and the water to drain out and get around. And I would suggest then you give it a good liquid feed, and make sure that it's kept, well hydrated in that particular pot. Yep. Now the other question was looking.
Hang on, I'm going to ask the question. I asked the questions here, mister.
Well, I had to answer them. That's why I thought you'd already answered them.
Before you do, we're talking about ornamental grapevines. You said a white and a red, but ornamental, does that still, the grapes can't be eaten?
No. If you're going to go for an ornamental...
Yeah, because that's what he's...
Yeah, well, I would suggest that he...
Don't do the ornamental thing.
Don't do the ornamental, because it's a lot of growth for no return. Whereas if you go for one that produces
grapes,
a nice grape then
You get to eat them.
You can either have a white variety and a red variety,
Right.
and the ones the species that I've said, which are Thompsons, seedless, and then crimson seedless, are the best ones for that particular.
So I think that sounds like a good idea. Okay, here
Okay,
comes the
what
question.
was the second question?
No, that wasn't the question. Hang on. Dave says, we have a brush fence beside our swimming pool that gets sun for most of the day. It has a very narrow channel to plant into and gets limited water due to a nearby retaining wall. We would like to plant a climbing fig or an alternative that is fast-growing, hardy and drought-tolerant. Something that won't create leaf litter beside the pool and can handle a salt air climate. We would appreciate any suggestions and advice, re-soil, etc.
And as I said in the email they sent to him, that the second question you'd already answered for yourself. That is, go for the ficus, the climbing fig.
Right.
But the variety that you want to be looking for is called Ficus pumila. And that is the small leaf variety. So it's going to have this wonderful compact little leaf. It's a great little plant for climbing and clinging onto the wall, and it'll have a green screen up there in no time flat. It doesn't need a lot of soil access. So where he's got
Perfect.
it is going to be absolutely brilliant. You might just need to mix a bit of compost into that soil just to ensure that it's got a good start. But yeah, great choice, Dave. Ficus pumila.
Fantastic. Okay, our last question, because we've been going for hours, it seems. Our last question for today is from Lauren. I've just planted out our driveway with beautiful dichondra repens as ground cover. We were talking about that recently.
Yeah.
We have rabbits as pests around our area, and they have nibbled off the top of each of the dichondra. Normally, I put protection around new shrubs until they mature. However, it's difficult with ground cover. I'd love some tips on natural deterrents to keep the hungry bunnies away.
Yeah, well, rabbits are an absolute scourge, and we go up to East Gippsland on a pretty regular basis, and we leave home at about 8:30 in the morning, and the amount of rabbits on the side of the road is just mind blowing. It's just incredible to see them, and they're out there in full sunlight. So there's a real scourge of these little mongrels around. The best way, dog. Haven't got a dog? Shotgun?
No.
Oh, you can't have that. No, that's all right. So that's probably the best way to do it. So you're going to have to put up a physical barrier of some sort, and that can just be like a wire across there, or you can use a couple of alternatives, both in a plant one and also in a liquid form. Things like lavender and rosemary. Rabbits hate the smell and the taste of those. So you can buy those as sprays and just go and spray the areas where they're coming in, or you can use them as plants, rosemaries, and plant those perhaps in that area. Dichondra is a very, very tasty little morsel for rabbits, unfortunately.
Seems like it.
They do. So what you've got to do is you've got to break the rabbit's feeding cycle. So applying either those as a spray or putting some plants in will help to do that. And that also breaks up their senses, their smell, so they're not likely to come in an area where it's got rosemary growing or lavender going.
Yeah.
And then there's another couple of effective things you can use, and these products are available at the big green warehouse at Bunnings. They produce a product called SCAT, SCAT, and that is a great product you can actually spray, and they've got those in RTUs. You can use other things like peppermint oils. So a peppermint spray is also another good deterrent for rabbits.
Right.
Or you can look at perhaps mechanical methods. So there's a company called Pestrol, and they produce solar-powered emitters that just flash lights, and it comes within their range. Or there's other different types of mechanical devices. You've just got to find the right one that's going to work. But I'd be starting off with the peppermint oil, the rosemary oil, or the lavender oil first, and just go and spray the whole area with that. Break the cycle of the feeding rabbits.
Absolutely. Good luck, Lauren. Okay, what a great variety of topics. Thanks so much to everyone for sending in their questions. They're amazing. Now, it's time for this month's prize winner. This week, the fabulous prize from the Plant Runner goes to Lauren, who has the stress of dealing with those rabbits munching away at her ground cover. We'll be in contact with you shortly, Lauren, and thanks again and again to the Plant Runner team for kindly providing our monthly Q&A prize. Make sure to check out their amazing garden products at theplantrunner.com. Thank you for listening to Muddy Boots. For more information on today's podcast, please go to muddyboots.net.au, and happy gardening.